We're going through these photos, looking at this. He goes dead white, like ghost white, and he did. And he drops the photo, and I'm like, what? What's the problem? He goes, dude, it's a face. He goes, just turn it at an angle, just a slight angle. And man, as soon as I turned that photo, that face popped, and I got goosebumps, and I went a little white because it was a face. This had detail. You could see earlobe, you could see eye pupils, you could see the bridge of the nose, you could see the cheekbones.
All right, Eric, how you doing?
I'm all right. How you guys doing? Can you hear me?
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear us all right?
Cool. All right.
Hey, Eric. Thanks for being here with us tonight, man.
Anytime. I appreciate you guys.
Where are we talking to you from? Where are you at?
So I'm in the northern panhandle of West Virginia, squeezed right in between Ohio and PA.
Okay, I know where that's at. My parents are from the Charleston area, if you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I have family down there.
Okay. You don't sound like you're from West Virginia or Pennsylvania or anywhere.
I know
In
they
that
get that
area.
all the time, but the reality is up north in West Virginia, we don't have that accent. We have
Okay.
this accent. So
I
we
kind of pick it
sound
out now. Okay, I got it.
we
Yeah.
sound we basically have a Pittsburgh accent. I live 40 minutes from Pittsburgh.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You know,
Gotcha.
so we say yins, and well, I don't. I got that word out of my vocabulary.
The Yins. Yes, I remember that. I lived a little bit outside. I lived in Mars, Pennsylvania, if you know where that's at,
Oh yeah.
for a couple of years when I was a teenager, and it was all Yins. And I was like, what the heck's a Yin? You
Yeah,
guys.
it's just y'all or you guys. Yeah, really, that comes from the Scots Irish settlers.
Gotcha. Well, I know we were like talking a little bit back and forth online and or messaging back and forth and everything. And you had some crazy experiences going on.
Yeah,
Where did those happen at? Where is that where you're at that these happened to you or?
yeah, the majority of them. The main story about the Loftus house happened right up in Hopedale, Ohio. So it's not far from here. It's basically 15 minutes from the Ohio River going west.
Okay.
And that's also, I think it's about maybe a 45-minute drive to Salt Fork.
Okay. Gotcha. So how old were you when this stuff started happening to you?
Um, really young. I mean, as far as some of the experiences, but like I kind of always start the story from the Loftus house because we're kind of like taught to brush this stuff off into, oh well, find an explanation, a reasonable explanation, quote unquote. So I don't think I really realized, because I've never had anything overt. Like I never walked into my kitchen and all the silverware was floating around. So like I don't think I really realized until I started getting into the paranormal full time how many experiences I actually had.
Well, why don't you start with the first one and tell us what happened to you and just take us into it, man.
So when I was 24, by that point I was becoming already a hardcore skeptic, always been into science, and I was kind of becoming an atheist slowly. I was definitely agnostic, and I was pretty close to being an atheist, and I didn't believe in anything at that point. Like if it, science said it wasn't real, I didn't believe it. So one night we were hanging out, me and a couple buddies, and I don't know how we got on the subject, but my one buddy Aaron was just basically like, "Hey, yeah, we were at this house, and everybody goes out there, and we decided to go out there and check it out, and I saw something levitate." And I was like, "Bullshit!" I called him out right there, and I was like, "There's no way." And the guy, you can see his face; he was dead serious. But of course, I'm convinced in all my arrogance that this stuff's not real, and he must either be full of crap or stupid. So I was just like, "Hey, I'll prove it to you. We'll go out there." So me and him and two other guys, went out there to the house, and it's out in the middle of the woods. Like, you got to cross a big bridge or a ravine just to get out there. It's in Fernwood State Forest, actually. So, you get out there, and the house is already long abandoned at that point, and you go across that bridge, which they call Burnout Bridge because everybody goes there to do burnouts, and you can see all the tire marks. So we got up there, and I'm not gonna lie, man. Like, Mr. Skeptic, I was spooked out by the place. I was extremely spooked out by the place, and the other guys would not go in there with me. So it was like we went out there for nothing. It was a big strikeout, but I wasn't willing to give that up. Like, somehow, I still decided, hey, this is bullshit, and I'm gonna prove it. So I got a braver group of guys, and we went back. And I brought a tape recorder, and I brought a disposable camera. So I don't remember like how many of those Kodak disposables, like how many pictures they had. I think it was maybe 30, but brought one of those and used up the whole roll. But when I went out there, I didn't see anything like overtly, nothing levitated for me or anything like that. But I remember when I first got out of the car and I walked up to the house, I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And that never happens to me. Like, just, I can count, on one hand the number of times in my life the hairs on the back of my neck have actually stood up. And for seemingly no reason. It's like when people talk about the air feeling heavy or thick or whatever, it for sure felt like that out there. So, I started snapping pictures, and we went all through the house, and I snapped pictures inside and out and played the tape recorder, or recorded anyway. And, we left. And I went to, at that time, you still had to develop photos. So I went to Walmart. I dropped off the photos, went back, and I'm looking at these photos, and half of them are messed up. They got this white fog all through them. And I'm like, what the hell, man? What did you guys do to my photos? So I go up to the lady, and I'm like, hey, what's up with this? Why are some of these photos? It was like exactly half. Too weird. Like, I think, like I said, it might have been 30 photos or whatever, and it was like exactly half the photos had this white fog all through it. And she's like, honey, there's nothing wrong with those photos. And I'm like, yeah, but look at them. And she's like, honey, there's nothing wrong with those photos. And she gives me this weird look. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? So I'm like, all right. So I take my photos, and we go back to the house, and I'm like, that was weird. What was that look all about? So me and Aaron, the guy originally, started all this, we're going through these stories, or I mean, through these photos, looking at this. And he goes dead white, like ghost white. I've never seen anybody actually go pure white. And he did. And he drops the photo, and I'm like, what? What's the problem? He goes, dude, it's a face. I'm like, huh? It's like, look, it's a picture. So I pick it up, and the picture was the outside shot that I took of the house. So it was basically like, pretty much containing the whole property in the house. And I think that was like the first pic I took. And it's also the worst pic as far as the fog. Like, half of this pic is just nothing but this thick white fog all through it. And I'm like, I don't see a face. What are you talking about? He goes, just turn it at an angle, just a slight angle. And man, as soon as I turned that photo, that face popped, and I got goosebumps, and I went a little white because it was a face. And I know a lot of people, they want to think, pareidolia. And I get that, because I used to play with pareidolia, in the clouds and stuff. Like, look at the clouds and see what I could make out of it. Same thing. But this was a face. This had detail. This had, well, actually, like, the face was very detailed. And then as it trailed off to the other side, it became more misty and diffuse. But on the detailed part, you could see earlobe, you could see eye pupils, you could see the bridge of the nose. I mean, you could see the cheekbones. You don't get that kind of detail with pareidolia. I'm sorry. Like, you'll never convince me that's what it was. And unfortunately, I don't have the pic now to this day because I basically passed it out to everybody. I wanted to get as many opinions on it as possible. Like, I had like a photography expert look at it who said he thought it was definitely evidence of paranormal. And I don't know if it got lost then or if it got lost when my storage unit got robbed, because that was a big thing around here for a little bit. But at some point, it got lost. I think I have the other photos somewhere. They're not as impressive. Definitely no human face. But I mean, you guys want to hear the story behind that place? Why it's supposedly haunted? Okay, so allegedly, from what they were saying, is old lady Loftus went crazy, murdered her family, and got away with it. And so kids would go up there and they would throw rocks at her house and they would torment her. Oh, you killed your family, you evil witch, and all this stuff. So she would take pot shots at them with a rifle. And I don't think she ever hit anybody. I'm not sure she was trying, but she definitely would shoot at people. That was true. And so people would pass that story around, and I had heard it. So I mean, you would think a murder like that's definitely going to cause a haunting. But so one day I'm talking to my sister's ex-boyfriend about this because I'm telling everybody. I was pretty fascinated by it. And he goes, yeah, that's not really what happened, by the way. He goes, my dad used to take care of that lady because she would never leave the house. He brought her groceries and stuff. And I'm like, get out of here. Really? He goes, yeah. He goes, that's not what happened. Well, what happened? So he goes, apparently the daughter got kind of bad on drugs. She got depressed and she hung herself off that bridge I was talking about. And I guess the dad came home, seen it, and lost his mind, and he blew his brains out with a shotgun. So, it was pretty tragic. And I guess stuff like that really does leave like an impression, but no doubt in my mind, that place was definitely haunted for sure. So
It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird that you say that. I mean, when you hear that kind of stuff, you wonder if there was some possession going on, and maybe, it jumped from the daughter to the father or something like that. You know what I mean?
Oh, I mean, maybe. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you need possession to explain it, but at the same time, I mean, given the nature of what's going on there afterward, I mean, I don't think you can ever rule that kind of thing out. But as of when that happened, the lady was actually still alive. She was living in a nursing home, and the county, they got tired of people going out there and partying and messing the place up. So they finally tore it down. So it's no longer standing. But it's funny. Like I ran into a paranormal group online that had quote unquote investigated the place, and they went in the daytime for some reason. I'm not really sure why you would go in the daytime, but they said, "Oh, debunked. This place isn't haunted. It's all crap." And I told them about my experience, and of course, they laced into me right away. Well, where's all these pictures and yada yada? And they were just being pretty rude about it, like debunkers like to do. So yeah, it was just that was the experience that really woke me up and said, hey, like, this stuff's real. And kind of as a result of that, I started actually finding a little bit more faith. And yeah, I believe in God now. I mean, I don't go to church regularly, but I definitely strongly believe in God, and I believe in everything. Like, I don't think there's really anything out there that, like, they told us all this stuff is baloney. Like, the Enlightenment age came along and said, hey, there's nothing to it. It's not real. Well, that was a lie. And they still raise us in that lie in this society to this day that all this stuff it's not real. Well, it is real. It's all real. And I think that you have a lot of sections of the government that know that, even deal with this stuff sometimes. But, they're never going to divulge it. It's just like the UFO thing. They're never going to come right out and say, hey, for sure, this is real. And by the way, this is what's going on.
Yeah, it's almost like you talk about that time of night. They talk about the witching hour. Anything in between like 1:30 and 2:45, 3 o'clock in the morning, all these creepy things can happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
And these paranormal weird things can happen. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the government's not going to come out and say that. Yeah, aliens are real, Bigfoot's real. That's never going to happen. I think, and if it does happen, then it's going to develop over a slow period of time. Like we talk about things like right now, like, we're talking about Bigfoot, we're talking about paranormal, we're talking about ghosts and all that stuff. So it's just going to take a long time for that to be heard over and over and over again, for people to just kind of accept it. And yeah, the government's never going to say, oh yeah, by the way, Bigfoot are real,
Right.
So what else have you had happen going on?
Sorry about that. My landlord was texting me. I had to look at that real quick. I got a leak down in the basement. But so yeah, like I've had lots of different stuff happen, and like I was like 27 at the time, and life wasn't going too hot. I was really depressed, and I had always kind of had nightmares, like growing up. Every once in a while, I would have like a really ridiculously bad nightmare. I had one where I was being chased by zombies, and literally every time I went to bed, I'd wake up and have it, and it would, they'd seem real, and it would be scary, you know. But I started having these dreams when I was 27 that were just beyond real. They were so lucid and just seemed like almost sitting there awake, where this entity, this completely black entity, would keep coming into my dreams. And like I don't remember a lot of the dreams. I'm not really good at remembering them anyway, but like this thing, like as I had these dreams more and more, they would become more and more real each time. And they'd get scarier and scarier. Well, finally at one point, I had the dream and this thing was in there, and I don't remember what it was saying. I just remember that, it was there for me. It wanted me, and basically was not going to stop chasing me until it had me. And I was terrified, absolutely terrified. And so I woke up, and that was like the first dream that I really remember. Like I knew I'd been having the dreams, but I didn't really remember any detail. So the next time I had the dream was the worst. It was the realest, man. It was so terrifying that, I mean, it scares me to think about to this day. I'm a grown man, and I was a grown man then. But so this entity came back, and it's like a humanoid shape, but it's almost like puffed out. Like it's not completely humanoid. Like it's almost like it's wearing a cloak or something like that, a silhouette. But it just resonates pure evil, and just wants me for whatever reason. It's obsessed with me. It's there for me. And finally, in this dream, I started yelling at this thing. I kept repeating, Jesus Christ is my savior. Jesus Christ is my savior, over and over again. I mean, I was yelling at this thing, at this thing with everything I had, because I was tired of it. I wanted it to go away. And the only thing I knew that I thought that could help me was Jesus. So I woke up after that in a cold sweat. I was terrified, like to the point where I'm checking my room looking for this thing. And That was the last time I ever had that dream. I invoked Jesus Christ's name in one dream, and I have never been visited by this thing since. And again, like I'm not super religious. I'm not trying to thump the Bible on anybody's head. I'm just saying that's what I went through. I was terrified. I don't think I was really, like I said, I had become a believer, but this is only maybe 3 years after that experience I just told you about. So it was a gradual thing. Like I'm still not like super down with Jesus or anything like that, but I was terrified, and I reached out to the only person I thought that could help me, and he did. He did. Like again, I haven't had any kind of bad dreams like that to this day. I feel protected. Like I don't. I sleep so easily now that it's amazing. And so like I listen to a lot of like podcasts. I'm listening to one right now, The Exorcist Files. It's great, and they talk about reasons that these things are able to get a hold of you and able to possess you. Like you were just talking about it earlier about possession. Like they can get a hold of you and they can make you do bad things. And so I started thinking of like, what have I done? Like, well, number one thing is messing with the occult. And I have definitely messed with the occult. Yeah. So when I was a kid, my aunt and I made this homemade Ouija board. And it sounds stupid because it was out of notebook paper, right? Like a notebook, planchette, and everything. Like, how is that going to work, right? But we did it and we used it. It was just us. So it's not like one of those things where you got to work real hard to figure out who's moving the thing if somebody's doing it. Like I wasn't doing it, so obviously it was my aunt, right? I'm sure she thought the same thing, but I had buried this memory for a long time. Really didn't think about it much, and like I had to work really hard to recall even what I asked. But I asked 3 questions. The first question I asked, "What am I going to be when I grow up?" And it said something odd because I'm one of the smartest kids in my class at this time. They keep telling me, "Oh, you're going to be a scientist. You do whatever you want," and that's what I wanted to do. I was really, really into science, and it tells me I'm going to be a truck driver. Like truck driver? I don't be no damn truck driver. Are you crazy? Nothing against that, but that just wasn't me. Like I didn't even have enough common sense at the time to be a truck driver. I just wasn't that kind of kid. And I asked it, who am I going to marry? And it gave me a four letter simple name, Kara. And then I asked it, am I ever going to have any kids? And it said a boy, one boy. Lo and behold, years later, despite trying to get out of it in any way, shape, or form, I am a truck driver. I am married to Kara. I have one son. Everything that made up Ouija board told me is 100% true. I swear to God.
Are you
It's
serious,
crazy.
dude? For real?
I'm dead serious.
Holy cow.
Everything. It
How did you
said
meet how'd you meet your wife?
on OkCupid.
And you saw her name was Kara and you're like, holy
But
shit.
I didn't though. That's the thing, because remember at this point, man, like I buried this memory. Like when I got my CDL, that was the first time I had thought. That was in 2006. That was the first time I had even thought about that in years. I forgot about it. And I was like, oh shit, I remember that. But I couldn't recall what the rest of the story was. I couldn't recall what else I asked. So like it had been eating at me for a while. Like, what did I ask? Because you want to know, like, did this really tell me the future? So if you talk about it enough and you sit down and, just think about it, eventually memories will come back to you. They never really leave you. It's just sometimes they're a little harder to recall than others. And that's when I came up with, so this is long after we're married and I have my son. And if you think about it, those are very obvious questions that anybody you're going to want to ask too, like, what am I going to be? Am I going to have kids? Am I going to get married? And at first, with like her name, I couldn't remember what it said. All I could remember was that it was a very simple 4-letter name. Well, that's Kara fits in that. And it just, one day, like I was thinking about it and the memory finally came back to me. It was Kara. And the other question that I asked came to me. It was like, am I ever going to have a kid? Now, I didn't ask the name or anything like that. But yeah, it told me I was going to have a boy. And I do. And that's odd because I'm 44. I didn't have my son till we were 38. Like he's 5 going on 6. So for the longest time, I thought I'm not going to have kids. Like I'm too old. Like he was an accident, man. Like, I love him to death, but we weren't planning on having him. But here he is, just like that thing said. So.
And this was a homemade Ouija board that you and your aunt did on paper.
Notebook paper.
Notebook paper.
But apparently, like according to like I said, like I think it's Father Carlos Martins on the Exorcist Files. He said all there straight up, that does not matter. If you make it out of wood, you can make them out of plastic, you can make them out of whatever you want. The fact is that you're making a device that is specifically meant for channeling. And if you're going to do that, ultimately that thing is really just a focus. It's helping you focus and use your mind, and you're making a connection, right? So there's one right there on me. There's one strike. How did the demons start following me? There's one strike. Later on, I had a job and I got in trouble. I'm not going to get too much into detail, but I got in trouble and like I was looking at possibly doing like jail time over it. Like I didn't hurt anybody or anything like that. It was kind of stupid, really. But I'm possibly looking at jail time. And, at that time, like I didn't really have my stuff together. I was kind of being an idiot. But so I'm worried about it and I'm nervous about it, of course, like anybody would be. I have a friend at this point who has another friend. And we're not friends really, but we're acquaintances and we had met. And I know these guys are Wiccans. Him and his wife both are Wiccans. So I get the bright idea. I am going to try to get some help in this situation. Like I should have just prayed to God, right? Like that's what you're supposed to do. But I decided I was going to cheat and go to these people and be like, hey, I need some help. I need something to help me out of this problem. I screwed up. I'm like, I don't want any kind of magic that's going to bring any kind of negativity or hurt anybody. I'm like, that is first and foremost. Cannot hurt anybody, detract from anybody. And so the guy's like, well, what about a good luck charm? I'm like, dude, that sounds perfect. It's not going to hurt anybody, right? No, he's like, it's just literally going to bring you good luck. I'm like, all right. So he's like, give us some time. We'll prepare, and then I'll get back with you. So 2 days later, dude hits me up. He's like, I need you to come over to the house. So we go over there. He's got this really nice, like, parchment paper. It's folded up. It's got some kind of symbol drawn in hand, like in ink on it. And it's perfectly drawn. And it's perfectly folded. And he goes, here. He's like, this is your good luck charm. We did a spell over it. He's like, you need to keep this on you at all times. It's like, if it's not on you, like if you leave it in the car, if you leave it in your house, it's not going to work. It has to be on your person at all times. Okay, no problem. I'll stick it in my wallet. My wallet's always with me. So I do that. 2 weeks later, out of nowhere, I get a call from my lawyer that says, hey, by the way, I just got a call. The chain of custody on your evidence got mishandled. It made it invalid. I'm like, what? Yeah. So they can't use that against you. You're probably going to have to deal with some kind of fine. You're going to lose your job, but you're not going to get in any kind of trouble. Okay. That is incredible. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, that's got to be coincidence, right? I don't know. That's a little weird. Like that just so happened to you know get mishandled just like that. Like right around the time I had that done. I don't know, man. I don't know about all that. I don't know if I believe that. I think that pretty clearly it worked.
Yeah, I think whether it be good forces or bad forces, I think there's obviously some, um, projection from that, whether it's good or bad. I mean, things can come about regardless of that. It's just, what are the result or what are the consequences, if any, of that as well.
Right.
So, but so weird for you to do that and then it predict. I mean, you didn't think about it when you got married. You didn't think about it, but then all of a sudden you had a kid and it's a boy. Didn't When did it like really click in for you?
Um, are you guys able to edit stuff out?
Absolutely.
All right. So I'll give you the full details on that. I just don't want to share it because it's
Okay.
kind of my business. So what really happened was I was in the Air Force. As far as when I started putting it all together, I mean, that's a good question. Probably not until I started, because I'm a truck driver. I'm out at night. I work 12-hour night shifts. So to say things get boring, that's a little bit of an understatement. So cell service is a little better. I can listen to YouTube and stuff like that a little bit better. Like I listen to you guys every Sunday. Great podcast, by the way. I appreciate you guys. And
Thank you.
that that was kind of when I started putting it together. Was a couple of years ago because I started getting so bored. I'm like, all right, I've only got a couple of interests. I love history and science, and I kind of ran through all the documentaries I had there, and I was running out of stuff. So I'm like, all right, I'm kind of into UFOs, and that just sent me down the rabbit hole. Like, I didn't believe in cryptids at all. For some reason, like even after I believed in ghosts, which is the first thing I believed in, and even after I believed in UFOs and aliens, like cryptids was a bridge too far. And I don't really understand why. It sounds a little ridiculous because honestly, if anything, you would think cryptids would be the most believable because really it's just an unknown animal. I mean, I guess I just figured that's in the realm of science. So science must know that one. Like they're lying to themselves about ghosts and aliens, but they got that one. Like, nah, I don't think so, man. I don't think they really have a good handle on a whole lot because you're just not allowed to go there in science. It ruins careers. I'm surprised that Jeff Meldrum still has a career, to be honest with you. But like I remember I had a boss. Now he was from Oklahoma, but he worked up in Colorado. That's where I met him and worked for him. And I work in the oil field. I'm a water truck driver. So Tony was his name. He was sitting there telling all these guys one day about he thought he saw Bigfoot going to a well. And I'm like, I'm listening to this story. He's talking about, he sees this big humanoid looking thing running through or looking at him through the woods when he's going to the well. And it looked like it was covered with hair and, it was too big to be a person. And I called him out. Like, I laughed at him. I laughed in his face. And the idea that, like, now I completely believe in that stuff. Like, I wish I could go back in time and kick myself square in the butt because I deserved it. I didn't even really give him the time of day. And I think that's what goes on a lot is people just, they shut this stuff down. They don't think about it. They don't want to think about it. And that's just how it is. But I had another buddy. This is actually a close friend at the time. He lives out by Fernwood State Forest. He lives in a town called Hopedale. And Hopedale, Ohio is just a small town, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And he was telling me that this one night, it was actually over a couple nights, over a week, out in the summer that they were getting these rocks thrown at them out of the woods, like a bunch of different places. And they would shine the lights in there and they would never see anybody. But yet, these big ass rocks would just keep coming and whatnot. So they would send people out into the woods to look, never find anything. And at times they would chase after people in a dead sprint, like getting frustrated, because sometimes these rocks would come pretty close to hitting people or they'd hit the house. And it was like ghosts out there throwing rocks and stuff like that. And I remember him telling me that story at the time. I didn't really have anything to connect it to, but when I started getting into cryptids and Bigfoot and whatnot, that's the first thing I went to. I mean, what is that? I mean, you guys tell me, what does that sound like to you?
Bigfoot for sure. I mean, I don't know of any other creature that, you have to have hands, right, to throw something. Obviously, we know that Bigfoot has hands. We know that Dogman has hands, but I don't think Dogman throws rocks. I'm not saying that they can't, but
Right.
I think they're just going to jump out and rip your throat and your heart out and eat it in front of you while you die. But
Right.
but no, back to the thing. Yeah, I can cut this out. I can cut out what you spoke about earlier. So I'll definitely do that for you, just so you're comfortable with that. But
I appreciate that. Hey, I know I've noticed we kind of have a little bit of lag. I know you guys are probably used to it. I apologize if I'm like starting to talk over you or not giving you a chance to talk or whatever.
It happens all the time.
yeah,
We're used to it.
all good.
Sorry. I mean,
All
I
good.
know
That's
I
all right.
listen to you guys. You guys are pretty good about letting people just talk.
So yeah, my opinion, I think it was a Bigfoot.
Yeah, that's what it
Right.
sounded like to me.
Right. I mean, what else? I don't like. You're not seeing anything out there. You're not able to run anything down out there. You're talking about fast young men that know how to move through the woods. I mean, out here, like, dude, you grow up in the woods, like, and it's so hilly in this area. Like, I live in Appalachia, so we're literally like human goats, you know? Like, we know how to go up a hillside like that, man. Like I can get up and down a hill, even at my age, like 44. I can get up and down it quick, man. Like just a lifetime of walking up and down hills. We always tend to have strong legs and stuff like that, But out in those woods with all those hills, with all that brush, when it is literally like a jungle in the summer, you're not getting out of there without making a ton of noise. Impossible. So either it was ghosts or it was Bigfoot, because those things seem to know how to move quiet through all that stuff.
The panhandle of West Virginia is right smack dab in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains, pretty much. I mean, you
Yeah.
might be at the foothills a little bit.
Yeah, we're foothills.
And that's where a lot of cryptids hang out. I mean, people think they live up in the mountains and caves, and they might, but we know these creatures come down and they stare in people's houses, and they watch humans. They get close enough where they can watch highways and cars go by it, all that stuff. So as you say you're driving at nighttime, you're a night delivery
Oh
person.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So have you seen anything weird on that kind of on your
I
job there?
I have not, and that's really a good question to ask that, because I keep my eyes peeled, definitely, but no, I haven't seen. And here's the thing, like growing up around here, one of the things you got to understand about this area, like talking to my grandfather is a perfect example. He's telling me about, at their time they grew up poor. They had a dirt floor in their house. At that, they did not have indoor plumbing, and so they had to supplement their food source with hunting. But he's like, back then you wouldn't see deer around here. Like if you saw a deer, it was a wild thing to see one, because people shot them and they knew to be scarce. And so like he was coming through the woods one day. He was like 8 or 9, and he stepped out of the brush and came down like a little rise, and all of a sudden there was this deer right there, and he was telling me like how transfixed he was, and I could see it in his eyes. Like now, you can't go 2 feet without bumping into a deer, man. Like West Virginia is the #1 state for deer accidents while driving and deer fatalities while driving. And this whole area is so bad. I can't tell you, like, I know people from other parts of the country who've never hit a deer. I don't know anybody here who's never hit a deer. Not one person. So what I'm getting at is back in the day, like, you didn't have a whole lot of food source for these things. And I don't think that they were really here, at least in my area. I think as far as like West Virginia goes, I think they were really confined to the deepest, darkest parts of the mountains for a while. But now that I think that the game is back, I mean, we have things that like now the area has coyotes. They're not really from here, but they're here. We have bears coming back now. And that's because there's so many deer and so many groundhog and rabbits and yada, yada, that I wouldn't be surprised if up until recently there weren't really a lot of Bigfoot in my area. But I think now they are working their way back into this area. Just like the bear are, they're coming back. And I honestly feel like with me being a night driver, it's only a matter of time before I spot one.
Yeah, most likely, especially in that area. But also in the Appalachian Mountains and the foothills right there, there's a lot of paranormal stuff that goes on around there too. So
Yeah, that's funny you should mention that too. Like the stuff we talked about already. But well, actually, this wasn't in this area. Now that I think about it, I used to live. I was staying out with my aunts. They live out by Dayton, Ohio. You know, and that's cornfields. That's the Midwest. Like it's completely different out there. It's a different culture. Um, but when I was living with her, I had this weird thing happen to me, and like for years, man, I tried to tell myself it was just a dream, but I woke up in my bedroom. It was like maybe 7:30 in the morning. And as I'm waking up and turning my head, I watched this gray man walk midair through my room, through my wall, and go. And I like put the covers over my head, and I'm like, what the hell was that? I'm only like 11 at the time. I was scared shitless. I wouldn't get up. I didn't get up for like 2 hours after that. And I just had to convince myself that it was a dream. And that's what I did. And again, I convinced myself it was a dream. I moved on. I kind of forgot about it. And then eventually, you know, you start thinking about it and like these memories come up. But it's like what I was talking about at the beginning. Like they really in this society teach you how to think ahead of time to cover their bases. You guys lose the audio?
There we go.
Okay, my bad.
Do you have any more experiences to talk about, Eric, before we wrap this up? Or
You guys heard what I just said, right? With the ghost walking through the wall.
oh yeah, we got all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which kind of freaky.
what do
Especially when
you
you're
talk,
11 years
talk
old.
about the talk about the what do you mean gray? I mean, was this like a
he just-
shadow, or was he like a cloud, or what do you mean?
You ever hear people talk about seeing ghosts, but they're completely like gray and they're
Yeah.
partially see-through? That's exactly what it was like. Completely gray, partially see-through, like not completely opaque, like a spirit. And walking, what really messed me up was like, oh, it's walking midair. So I let that convince me that, oh, it's definitely like a waking dream, because I'm awake at this point. But like, you know, you can have waking dreams, but
Yeah.
I'm like, well, ghosts don't do that. Well, yeah, actually they do. It turns out they can do whatever they want. They're ghosts.
Yeah.
So,
That's true.
you know, like,
So did you ever say anything to your aunt about that?
no,
No.
nope. My aunt, no nonsense lady. She would have listened to me anyway. She'd just be like, okay, you know, time to move on. But yeah, I do have other stuff to talk about. Like I apologize. I'm just gonna take some notes to make it a little easier. And I know like we do have a limited amount of time, but the house that I live in now, when I first moved in here, I kind of got a weird vibe from it. Like I had lived in other places where I got a weird vibe. Like I had an apartment in the same town. Like I'm from Weirton, West Virginia, and like I always felt being watched in that place. But like this place was weird because we first moved in. I was walking down the steps of the basement, and when you walk down there, you got to duck your head just a little bit. So as I'm ducking my head, I see this white cloud start to disappear, and I only see it for a flash. But it's like I start to duck my head, white cloud, poof, gone, and then like I'm completely down under it, and there's nothing there. Like it happened so fast, but it wasn't out of the corner of my eye. I mean, I was looking right directly at it. And I'm not gonna lie, it spooked me the hell out a little bit. Like I don't want to live in a haunted house, you know. So we would have like minor things, nothing I could pin down as definitely being haunted for the longest time. But like one day, like my wife comes to me and like, you know, my stepdaughter was afraid because she was coming out of her room and she had like a shadow rush at her. I'm like, what? Like a shadow being kind of like, yeah, like a shadow person rush at her. And she's had a lot of like ghostly experiences herself. She's always seen them. She said, you know, I don't know if she'd ever be interested in coming on and talking about that, uh, but like I even believing in the stuff that I do, I would probably brush that off. Except I had just had an experience like not even a full week before where I was hearing all this noise come from my kitchen, and it's like people messing with stuff or whatever, just shuffling paper and moving dishes around or whatever. And it kept getting louder and louder and louder and louder, and I'm like freaked out. It's like I'm like I got to go to the kitchen, but I don't want to go to the kitchen. So finally, kind of like stilled myself and was like, all right, I'm gonna go in the kitchen, and I walk in there, and literally, guys, the second I walk in there, it stopped. It cut off like instantly. And I'm like, what the hell is going on in here? And then when she tells me that story the next week, I'm like, I'm wanting to brush it off, but can't do it. Like yeah, I kind of believe her, and nothing's gone on since. I have this theory that like when things get tumultuous in the house is when it pops up the most. Like I think we were arguing or maybe going through some kind of issues at the time a little bit. No big deal. It happens, but I think that's when it seemed to pick up.
Very interesting. Have you ever thought about moving?
Yeah, we're definitely trying to move. Yeah, for sure. It's we're working on buying a place, but around here that doesn't happen fast.
Have you thought about calling a medium and maybe trying to cleanse the house?
No, I haven't called a medium or anything like that, or thought about it, because honestly, I think that could make it worse.
I guess there's always that possibility.
Yeah, and I don't even want to like. I'm not getting grabbed at. Nobody's been hurt. There's no reason to do that. Now, if that were the case, different story. But
Right.
yeah, no reason to do that stuff. I feel like I had some other stuff, but it was probably pretty minor anyway, and that was the bulk of it. That was the most important stuff. Like I just really wanted to stress like how I kind of came into believing this stuff. I went from total skeptic and to now I really have a pet peeve with skeptics, man, because shutting down all thought is not a way to solve anything.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we get that. People, when we talk about our podcast with other people, we get that all the time.
Oh, I bet.
People just don't want to know. They want to stay in their little, bubble and just think that we're the only things on the planet. And
Right.
they don't want to know about anything else.
Well, let me ask you, like, I know we got a limited amount of time, but let me ask you guys real quick. How do you really handle that? What do you say to skeptics and stuff?
Anymore, I just laugh them off. I don't even try to argue anymore. Because again, you're not going to convince them. You're not going to change their mind.
Right. Yeah,
I tell them listen to our podcast,
right.
and then come back and talk to me again. Listen to all of our episodes, then come back and talk to me, and then we'll get into it. For you're talking to a couple guys who have heard, my God, over 1,000 encounters.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it is, whether it be a Bigfoot, a ghost encounter, an entity, paranormal,
UFO.
I mean, people are way more accepting. What is weird is people are way more accepting of the paranormal side of things than they are of anything else. The
Even
ghosts,
aliens.
the ghosts, and the aliens too. But the ghosts and the entities.
Yeah.
So my question is, okay, if you guys believe in this, then you have to understand that there's another realm out there, or we just float around in emptiness in this earth as a spiritual entity. And what can we see? Can we influence? I mean, what's the point of that? So I mean, it could be that way. Who knows? But there's just way too much of a spectrum for people to sit there and go, well, that doesn't exist. Why? Because you haven't seen it before. And I throw this out there, and then people get so upset with me for saying this, but I ask people this, well, you believe in Bigfoot? I say, yeah, I do. And then it's like, well, I don't. I said, do you believe in God? Yes, I do. Have you ever seen God? No, I have not. Okay. So it doesn't mean you have to see something to believe in it, right?
Right.
And you have everything on this planet, from a little tiny ant, amoeba, up to a blue whale. You have everything that can walk, crawl, do anything you can think of, right? Why wouldn't there be creatures like Bigfoot or other things or entities? Why isn't there a paranormal realm? Maybe these things come in and out of that, and maybe there's spirituality to that. So we don't know. We have no clue about what's going on out there, and maybe maybe some of these spirits are ones that just can't find their way on, and they're just stuck here in a realm, and they just kind of can influence us. But who knows?
Right.
Nobody has the answer. So
yeah, or if they do, they're not telling us, right? Like the one thing that kills me though is, you bring that up. You have the spiritual, you have the physical, but everybody wants to know. Well, what is Bigfoot? Is it physical? Is it interdimensional? And the same thing with Dogman. But like I always tell them, what about the metaphysical? You can be both. We're metaphysical in nature. We have a body, but we also have an undying soul. Why can't Bigfoot be a physical creature and perhaps be able to access portals? That's what I think might be going on. I think that their hair allows them to hide like a chameleon, but I also think that some of them have figured out how to access portals that are naturally there, and that's how they can just get in and out of there like that. But I think there's probably people that have figured that out. I mean, if you hear like the skinwalker stories and stuff, people have seen those things moving in and out of portals. So I don't know. That's a little food for thought.
Yeah.
if you want to hear
we've had that conversation 1,000 times.
Yeah. If you want to hear my crazy theory, I'll say, I think we were put here on this earth as long as as other creatures, and we were just, I don't want to say experiments, but we're going to create this thing, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And I don't think it was just one thing creating us. I think it was a bunch of things creating us. And I think there's a hierarchy, a God, but I think there's just other things also involved in creating us. And well, let's try this. Let's try this. What if we make this? We got to make this. We got to make this. And we were like a trial and error, and we are the lightest and greatest trial of creatures of intelligence. The God, whoever wants to make, someone on this earth that can just do everything. Some things can do things physically, and they have abilities. Humans, our species, we have the mind capability. We're the strongest thing because we can use our minds to create anything we want to, supposedly, right? But you have Bigfoot who, can run through the woods, and maybe they have cloaking abilities. Maybe they have abilities to transport in and out of dimensions. Maybe that's their brain. Maybe that's their smartness. So many creatures on this earth have capabilities of doing different things, but obviously we're the hierarchy, so to speak. But you put us out in the woods, naked, barefoot, we're not going to survive like a Bigfoot will. We're not going to have that capability. We're not going to do that thing. So I think it's just an experiment of different things here, just with their abilities, different abilities. And us having our brains are our ability. So, as weird as that sounds.
Are you kind of talking about aliens basically messing with us?
Pretty much.
Yeah. So if you look at the Sumerian text, I mean, that's exactly what it sounds like they're saying. And then if you look at the Old Testament and you change a few things, a few mistakes, they weren't mistakes. They were done on purpose. Like when they talk about the Elohim in the original Hebrew text, allegedly that just is another word for God. But if you talk to a lot of Hebrew scholars, they'll tell you that Elohim is a plural form. Gods. The gods created the heaven and earth. And when you look at that, you start looking at like Adam not as the first man, but the first men. And the story just being a representation of that, it makes a lot more sense that way. I don't think what you're saying is crazy at all, man. I think that the hallmarks and the evidence are there if you look.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm going to tell you what, there was not just Adam and Eve on this earth. They did not, whatever they looked like, they did not create
Are you telling
Chinese.
me we're not all inbred?
I am telling you that, Brian. I mean, you cannot take one type of species specifically and say, well, it's going to be Chinese, black, Hispanic, white. How many different,
Right.
type of humans? You can subcategorize humans, can you not? Yeah, obviously
yeah.
you can, right?
That's
That's what I always thought ethnicities were sub-races, basically.
Yeah.
There's
So
minor differences, but not enough to really make us different, like in the grand scheme of things. We're basically the same thing, but we adapt to the areas we live in.
yeah. And I think that, again, different types of species of humans were put on this earth for different reasons in different areas. And, however you want to look at it. But
Right.
anyway, Eric, it was great having you on tonight, man, and great talking about your encounters and experiences and all that stuff. So
it was great. Hey, real quick,
yeah,
Brian, how you been feeling, man?
Oh, good, man. I'm getting right back in there. I'm 90% now.
Yeah. It wasn't a lot, man, but I did hit your GoFundMe up for a couple dollars. So
thanks,
thank
man.
you, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I just want to let you know, man, I was thinking of you, and my thoughts have been with you. I hope that you keep on trucking strong, man.
Well, thank you. I will. I appreciate it.
No problem. Hey guys, it's been great.
Yeah, it was awesome talking to you tonight, Eric, for sure.
Yeah, it was.
All right, man. I'll be listening.
All right, sounds good, brother.
Keep in touch. Let
sometime.
us know if anything else is going on out there.
I will do that. Yes, sir.
All right, see you, brother.
All right, thanks. Later.